Welcome to our Halloween episode of Zelf on the Shelf! Woo! Hopefully everyone's in your little costumes today. We didn't announce it, we just assume you always dress in costume because all the world's a stage and every outfit is a costume. Mm-hmm. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yours?
This costume was inspired by my Halloween costume not being ready yet, so I'm actually wearing Jared's costume from last year, which is a sensation. He made it himself from recycled materials. I highly recommend going to my Instagram story on the Samspo and watching my lobster highlight to see the process of how it was made, because it's a work of art and it's an honor to be in this suit. And you were just in this suit earlier this week,
Yep,
no?
it will be making a cameo appearance in my music video Psychic News coming out soon.
Bit of a sisterhood of the traveling lobster situation. Couldn't be happier about it.
For those of you joining us for the first time, my name is Tanner.
And I'm Sam.
And we're going to be your guides into the wonderful, fantastical world of Mormon cryptids. Ooh.
More specifically, Tanner is going to be our guide today because you have taken the lead on this video. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to learn along with the rest of you. How familiar do you think most people will be with a lot of this stuff?
I think most people have heard of a couple, and others will be like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. There was one that I found just this morning that I was like, oh, what? I myself today am a vampire. Which, I think there's some speculation that Jesus may be a vampire.
That would make sense.
Undead, drinks blood, hates crosses, has to be invited in. Something to think about.
A lot of blood stuff.
Yeah. Makes you think. You really do look like a sea pope.
Thank you.
Born to rule and reign from the deep. Okay, our first fantastic beast of Mormonism comes from the Book of Mormon itself. This is canon. And that is dragons are theologically part of Mormonism.
Wait, there's dragons in the Book of Mormon?
There is dragons
No,
in the Book of Mormon. Yeah, because the Book of Mormon cites heavily, some would say plagiarizes the King James Version of the New Testament of Isaiah, which mentions dragons.
And of course they believed in dragons back when Isaiah was written.
Yeah, and you have to keep... And Isaiah itself is a whole spurious thing. There's like lots of scriptures that are attributed to Isaiah that now biblical scholars have realized isn't that, and yet you see those being copied like word for word in the Book of Mormon. So it's like, why is it that Joseph Smith borrowed specifically from the biblical, from the Bible version that he had that actually has misinformation in it? Just one of those.
The CES letter is a hilarious joke at best.
Debunked. So yeah, it quotes Isaiah as saying dragons, and then also talks about a battle in the Book of Mormon where the soldiers fought like dragons.
Like dragons.
So there's some speculation that this could actually mean a crocodile or maybe a Komodo dragon. Who knows?
Was that a dinosaur? What's a Komodo dragon?
A Komodo dragon is maybe
like
the largest living reptile. Those big ones in it's not Australia, but New Guinea. Where? They live in a really isolated geographical region, and they're just huge. Their saliva is really, really toxic because it's got a ton of bacteria in it. They're scary as shit. They try to link it to Quetzalcoatl. Dragons isn't that crazy because the ancient Native Americans used to worship a feathered serpent. So that's the first one. Are you ready for our second fantastical beast?
I'm ready.
Is it fantastic beast? Fantastical beast?
Just a light touch on the dragons then.
Yeah, not too much info about the dragons.
But we got to acknowledge them.
Yeah, they're part of this fantastic family. The next one are Cureloms and Cumoms. Cureloms and Cumoms? Cureloms and Cumoms? You heard of these ones?
Yeah, I can't remember what I thought they were. I guess something adjacent to like a pig was my impression.
Oh, Nephi also talks about the fiery flying serpents that bit the people of Moses. So that was just being like, yep, there were fiery flying serpents once upon a time that bit all the people until they looked at the brass serpent.
This is probably a question that doesn't need to be asked, but there's never been any kind of flying snake, right? That we know of.
I mean, birds are essentially flying reptiles, aren't they? Like...
Yeah, but not flying snakes.
Shit. I mean, I don't want to say never, but I've never seen a one or heard of a one?
I think it's interesting that Bernie is very drawn to you this week now that you're Dracula.
Yeah.
It might just be that he enjoys the feel of sateen.
Yeah, it reminds him of his
He loves a
savior.
cloak that he can climb into.
Don't we all? So yeah, the Book of Mormon mentions two curious creatures, Cureloms and Cumoms, who are commonly portrayed as being like mastodons.
And those are...
Like woolly mammoths.
Okay.
Which is, I don't know why they just assumed that. So the scripture says, talking about the Jaredites, and also all manner of cattle, and also many other kinds of animals which were useful for the food of man. And they also had horses and asses. There were elephants and Cureloms and Cumoms, all which were useful to man, and more especially the elephants and Cureloms and Cumoms. So I suppose because they were mentioned specifically with elephants, that they're like, oh, then it must be kind of like an elephant. Well, what's the only animal that existed in any timeline in the American continent? Must be woolly mammoths. Now, this one is interesting because when Joseph Smith is translating, first of all, this mentions asses, and if you go to Fair Mormon, which I did this morning, they said that asses isn't asses, it's not donkeys, because of course we knew that there were no donkeys in the Americas before Columbus. So they said it must be a tapir, of course, our favorite ex-Mormon animal, our mascot. It just
seems like if the words are appearing on the stone, which is the current thing, the current argument, and they're going to include words like Curelum and Cumum, they could have just used tapir. They could have just used whatever the apologists are saying the things actually are. It seems like they could have just used those words, because the Book of Mormon doesn't shy away from using words that are not modern English words that we use.
So this is so silly because the apologists say, okay, he saw an animal. Joseph Smith must have, in a visionary state, seen an animal that he didn't recognize and just called it an ass because it wouldn't have been the Nephites or the Jaredites writing ass. That's a European word. And so they're like, he is substituted a name for that, for a commonly known, name of an unknown animal for a commonly known animal, and then mentioned an unknown animal with a unique name.
And the words appeared on the stone, except for the times when he got something that seems really fishy wrong. That's when he was just kind of like getting it through, channeling it and seeing it in his mind and writing it down. It's like, once again, the apologists trying to have their cake and eat it too.
In the same verse. That's got to be their least favorite verse. Oh, this is a quote from Orson Pratt. He speaking about the Jaredites, said, "Now to prepare them against these contingencies, and that they might have fresh air for the benefit of the elephants, Cureloms, or mammoths, and many other animals." Again, this is an apostle giving a definitive statement about Cureloms or mammoths and many other animals that perhaps were in them, as well as the human beings they contained. The Lord told them how to construct them in order to receive air, that when they were on the top of the water, whatever side up their vessels happened to be, it mattered not. They were so constructed that they could ride safely, though bottom upwards they could open their air holes that happened to be uppermost. It is so bizarre to me that anyone could say that straight-faced and not think about it for 2 seconds. You've got a barge of, this like football-shaped vessel that is just spinning in the ocean full of elephants, mammals, and people. And they're like, but there were holes in the top and the bottom so that they could just open it up and breathe on either side. And it's like, you didn't think about just smashing around in there all the way across the ocean.
Serious things, Tana. To be honest, if I'm putting myself in a believer's mind, that's the least of my concerns. God can keep the animals fixed in place. God can create a normal gravity-like circumstance while that's happening. That's where my mind would go.
I mean, it's just as absurd to believe he teleported them. It's not any more.
Yeah, he might as well have. It's just
practical.
Like that would have been a shorter story. So that wouldn't have worked.
Just spinning around, and they've got holes in both. It's so.
It's animal abuse for first thing.
Abusing our fantastical beasts. Beast number 3 is technically a cryptid. Did you know that it is common folklore that the creature known as Bigfoot is actually Cain, son of Adam and Eve?
Didn't Brigham Young say that? Which prophet said that?
So let's just read about it. The story originally comes from David Patton. He said, "I met with a very remarkable personage who had represented himself as being Cain. I suddenly noticed a very strange personage walking beside me. For about 2 hours, he wore no clothing but was covered with hair. His skin was very dark. I rebuked him in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ and by virtue of the holy priesthood, and commanded him to go out of hence, and he immediately departed out of my sight.
Who's David Patton?
I want to say a Mormon apostle, at least a missionary. So he told that story, and it's like, okay, that's kind of silly to assume that some person you saw was Cain, but I guess that's how he identified himself. And that should have just been like relegated to some weird stories. Back in the day, they were spouting all kinds of stuff.
Seeing stuff like that.
But then Spencer W. Kimball thought it was necessary to mention the story in his book, The Miracle of Forgiveness, the book which famously teaches that masturbation is a sin next to murder, that it will turn you gay.
We did react to that book once. We'll link that video in the description box.
He also included this story, which
Beautiful.
gave it credence in as something more than just folklore, that this Cain figure really did appear, and he's just walking in the earth, scaring people riding their horses. Apostle Joseph Fielding Smith was told by E. Wesley Smith, a man came through the door. He was tall enough to have to stoop to enter. His eyes were very protruding and rather wild-looking. His fingernails were thick and long. He wore no clothing. I commanded the person in the name of Jesus Christ to depart. On being commanded to leave, he backed out the door.
They always do.
The reason that the Cain story has been kind of squashed these days, of course, is because they're horrifically racist. Pretty much anytime you have a Mormon accounting, and we have another story here, a huge black Negro who chased them away, and they're like, that must have been Cain, who is evil, because Cain is, in Mormon doctrine, the father of black people. It had nothing to do with, people in Africa living close to the equator and eating melanin in their skin to protect them from the sunlight. It was because they were wicked, because Cain murdered and now has to walk the earth, breaking into people's houses and walking by them until he gets commanded to depart.
Brigham Young said the moment we consent to mingle with the seed of Cain, the church must go to destruction. We should receive the curse which has been placed upon the seed of Cain.
Yeah, so all of this is just folklore stuff that's accentuating that idea that black people are inherently bad, and probably Cain. Probably not just descendants of Cain, but that was probably Cain himself.
Brigham Young also said Cain slew his brother, and the Lord put a mark upon him, which is the flat nose and black skin. Trace mankind down to after the flood, and then another curse is pronounced upon the same race, that they should be the servant of servants, and they will be, until that curse is removed, and the abolitionists cannot help it, nor in the least alter that decree. How long is that race to endure the dreadful curse that is upon them? The curse will remain upon them, and they can never hold the priesthood or share in it until all the other descendants of Adam have received the promises and enjoyed the blessings of the priesthood. Until the last ones of the residue of Adam's children are brought up to that favorable position, the children of Cain cannot receive the priesthood. They were the first that were cursed, blah, blah, blah. That's in the Journal of Discourses, Volume 7, pages 290 to 291. Brigham Young also said, also in the Journal of Discourses, different chapter, different speech, I think, he went on about this a lot. Why are so many of the inhabitants of the earth cursed with the sin of blackness? It comes in consequence of their fathers rejecting the power of the holy priesthood. They will go down to death. And when all the rest of the children have received their blessings, then that curse will be removed from the seed of Cain. Anyway, there's a lot. You get the gist.
Apparently it wasn't until 1980-ish when Weber County residents saw a black creature or figure in the fields and discovered prints that were discovered in the snow. And they began associating those sightings with Bigfoot and with Cain, since that was the easiest image to draw from in Mormon folklore, as many leaders had given credence to the myth, including Spencer W. Kimball in 1970 or whenever he wrote that book. The person writing about it says, Cain's new activities of stalking barns and running through fields seems far less satanically malicious than Elder Patton's Cain or the gigantic demon that stalked Wesley Smith. Cain, rather than a supernatural fiend, is more the stock monster of a campfire tale. He is less a damned soul and more Bigfoot. So that's the birth of Cain as Bigfoot.
Beautiful.
We love it.
I swear, just being in Mormonism for 5 years, I heard multiple times that Cain was Bigfoot.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think that was like, relegated to the past. It was, people said it.
My seminary teacher told us that. And there's, of course, I guarantee you, I'm already going to jump ahead of the Mormons who are going to watch this and be like, that's not official church doctrine. You guys are spouting lies and confusing folklore with doctrine.
Prophets did say it, and like a lot of people kept saying it, so.
And what's funny too is so often in these things where they're being like, this is so silly. This is a second-hand account that was written 10 years after the fact. And it's like, oh, that means it's more credible than the New Testament Gospels, than Brigham Young's Transfiguration, all these events that are the first vision. Okay.
I do not want to start disparaging second-hand accounts in Mormonism.
The next fantastic beast, which is, another sort of cryptid, since we don't get the exact definition or description of the figure, is the Destroyer on the Water. Ooh. Are you familiar with this myth?
No, I've heard of the Destroying Angel, but never heard of water being involved.
Okay, well, let's just read a little background.
Doesn't Satan control the water? Is it?
This is where that comes from.
All right.
From June to August 1830, Joseph and some of his top lieutenants, including Martin Harris, my great-great-great-grandfather, Sidney Rigdon, Edward Partridge, left for Ohio, where they met up with Oliver Cowdery. There, Joseph revealed that Independence, Missouri was to be the place for the city of Zion. About a week later, the men were ready to return home to Kirtland. Joseph gave them the will of the Lord. Verily I speak unto you concerning your journey unto the land from whence you came. Let there be a craft made, or bought, as seemeth you good, it mattereth not unto me. And take your journey speedily for the place which is called St. Louis. Joseph explained that on the third day of their return trip, they ran into many of the dangers so common upon the western waters. And Brother Phelps, in open vision by daylight, saw the destroyer in his most horrible power ride upon the face of the water.
Okay.
Joseph wrote, Behold, I, the Lord, in the beginning blessed the waters, but in the last days, by the mouth of my servant John, I cursed the waters. Wherefore the day will come that no flesh shall be safe upon the waters. Oh. And it shall be...
The ocean is collapsing, so
it's looking pretty bad.
Might be a prophecy.
And it shall be said in the days to come that none is able to go up into the land of Zion upon the waters, but he that is upright in heart. And now I give unto you a commandment, what I say unto one, I say unto all, that you shall forewarn your brother concerning these waters, that they come not in journeying upon them, lest their faith fail, and they are caught in snares. I, the Lord, have decreed, and the destroyer rideth upon the face thereof, and I revoke not the decree.
So they basically just saw some kind of big fish on the water somewhere in the distance.
I mean, I think it was just being like...
This is a choppy sea.
Yes, who knows, but it seems like the destroyer, probably Satan, but he's riding something... Maybe a Curelum or a Cummum, maybe some kind of unicorn, which is also mentioned in the Bible, a dark unicorn perhaps.
But do you think it was just that they saw some like normal ocean phenomenon and then Joseph's like, it's something spooky?
They're just like going down the river. It's like not even...
Oh, it's a river? Okay.
This article kind of goes into detail about how, Joseph Smith gives the revelation, you got to go on the waters, and then they find the water to be really rough and hard. So then he gets another revelation. It's like, actually the water is so bad and cursed. I, the Lord, do not want you to go on the water.
That is making more sense, actually.
This was, the next morning Joseph manifested an aversion to risk his person any more upon the rough and angry current of the Missouri, and again he had recourse to use his usual method of freeing himself from the embarrassment of a former commandment by obtaining another in opposition to it. It was decreed that we should proceed on journey by land, and preach the way as we pass along.
It's giving Joseph getting a revelation to go sell the copyright to the Book of Mormon in Canada, failing miserably, and then saying that that was Satan, actually.
Yeah, the waters are cursed, and that's in Mormon folklore the reason that missionaries can't swim, even though they can baptize in water. Riddle me that.
Can missionaries not even swim in pools?
No, and it's weird how they have to have like some mythical folklore reason to do it rather than being like, it's not good for our insurance, we don't want anyone to die because being water risks,
But sending them to, areas with tons of gunfighting and stuff, that's fine. Because if you die on a mission, you go straight to the Celestial Kingdom. So that's chill.
Someone who was shot at, but did not go into the ocean that I was 10 feet away from. I have very strong feelings about that. Okay, our next fantastic beast of Mormonism is the Bear Lake Monster.
No! Bear Lake?
Have you heard of the Bear Lake Monster?
Brilliant. cat and a lobster.
Oh,
Lying down together.
Honorable mention goes to satyrs, which is also a Bible mention that carries over into the Book of Mormon for reasons.
Is that like a human like horse? What's a satyr?
It's a half man, half goat, like a Mr. Tumnus type.
Love that. And one of Tana's best tweets was he was a satyr boy. She said, "See you later, boy." He wasn't goat enough for her.
Hey. The Bear Lake Monster. In the summer of 1869, the New York Times reported an interview with Brigham Young Jr., who, in my mind, is played by Don Trump Jr. Like, same energy.
Yeah.
So, old Briggy Jr., in which he stated that my father was going to investigate the claims to determine whether the story of the Bear Lake Monster was an honest tale of a serpent or only a fish story. Supporting this claim is the letter to the Deseret Evening News from Brigham Young and his traveling party, which mentioned that they had stopped at Bear Lake to see if they could spot the elusive creature. In his personal correspondence with church leader David P. Kimball of Paris, Idaho, Young mentioned sending a large rope to the local community to aid in capturing the monster.
I just think it's important to think about the fact that these are the kinds of things that these men concern themselves with when you consider that they were, witnesses to sort of like the founding of this religion, the gold plates, all that stuff,
Yeah.
This was the kind of thing that they could be swayed into getting tangled up in.
Exactly. And again, Mormons watching this will be like, that's all just folklore. Of course, no one believes in actual monsters. And it's like, well, your actual stories aren't really any more credible or realistic.
Martin Harris
than
saw
all
Jesus
this.
in the form of a deer.
And it is noted that Brigham Young frequently mentioned various monsters in his sermons. So it's like, yeah, not hard to believe that the guy who believed in monsters and dragons and Bigfoot Cain walking around the earth also believed in angels and voices and, this
Blood
and that.
atonement.
Perhaps even more interesting was the apparent sighting of the monster by church apostles. John Taylor, George Q. Cannon, Wilford Woodruff, Lorenzo Snow, Franklin D. Richards, John H. Smith, and Joseph F. Smith. They reported in the Deseret Evening News that while on the way from Fish Haven, these are apostles of the church.
Yep. With surely a greater measure of the priesthood and the Holy Ghost than anyone else, Like they are really walking in their power all the time.
While on the way from Fish Haven, a number of the party saw what they supposed was the celebrated Bear Lake Monster. It was described as a large, undulating body with about 30 feet of exposed surface, of a light cream color, moving swiftly through the water at a distance of 3 miles from the point of observation.
First of all, look at Bernie.
Oh,
Taking a nap on the globus.
The most fantastic beast.
The second of all, maybe he's gravitating to me because I'm coming for his Pope position.
Maybe.
What do you think they actually saw, if anything?
A sturgeon?
What's a sturgeon?
A big old fish. Some have speculated that it may be a dinosaur that just never died out until, enough humans poisoned the lake and died off. I want to go do some investigative journalism. I think I'm going to find my way up there soon.
I think we need it. Although it's freezing there right now.
Yes.
Oh my god.
And I did find out that there is going to be a Monster of Bear Lake movie coming out next year, I believe.
Like a fictional sort of...
Well, we'll see. But there you have it. Mormon apostles witnessing the Bear Lake Monster. So...
Who's more trustworthy than Mormon apostles,
Nobody I know.
The Spirit helps you discern truth.
Again, with the the Transfiguration. Sorry, this is such a tangent. I don't have to go on that. I just found out that the first person who told the story of Brigham Young's Transfiguration, which again was the people who wrote about the miracle happening, literally weren't even there at the time. Nobody who was there in person wrote about anything miraculous happening in their journals until 50 years later. And the first person to mention it was Albert Carrington, who famously got excommunicated as an apostle for soaking, the very first OG soaker. He started having sexual affairs and argued that he didn't actually break the law of chastity because he didn't orgasm. It was just a little folly in Israel. He pulled out, and our pull-out prince still got excommunicated, but will live on in our hearts as the first OG soaker of Mormonism. So that's our fantastical beasts of Mormonism. Who's your favorite Mormon cryptid? If it was like a Pokemon situation, who would you pit against who?
I mean, the dragons are pretty compelling. But the Bear Lake Monster just feels, because it's local, we've been there, we can still go there. I don't know, that one intrigues me a lot.
I love the Bear Lake Monster. I want to create a myth about some kind of salt lake beast. Probably a whale, actually.
Didn't you?
The whale that swallowed Jonah is actually in the Great Salt Lake.
Drinking all the water.
Yep. Eating brine shrimp. But Tanner, isn't the Great Salt Lake only about a foot deep? Listen, all things are possible for God, okay? Doesn't have to conform to our ideas of what's natural and unnatural. We don't have to prove our faith through science or reason.
Now that the video's over, just want to remind you guys, you can watch our Adam series on Patreon from start to finish now. It's the story of Charlie's son. He goes on a mission, he gets a porn addiction. It's a hilarious series. Support us for any amount on Patreon and you get access to all of that. We also have merch! Oh my god, also by the time this video comes, actually it might go out the day before. Thursday of this week, so what date is that? What's the date today? 25th. So 27th, our candle collab with Exmo Candles comes out and it's the best smelling candle ever. So much so that we don't have one of it right now because I burned it out within like the first few weeks of having it.
I am serious. Like, you know, I've had candles for years and they just kind of go unnoticed, but ever since I started lighting this candle, people are like, what is that smell? That is so good. And I'm like, it's actually our fragrance.
It's banana nut bread and coconut and it's incredible. It is incredible. It is the best candle for autumn, winter. And if you buy one, it really supports us. So yeah, and it supports Exmo Candles, which we really love. We love Jen at Exmo Candles. We love the company. They plant a tree for every candle they sell.
They don't use plastic in the packaging.
Yeah, they don't use any plastic in their packaging. And they said that we could pick where the trees get planted from the candles we sell. So we're pretty excited about that.
Hopefully they can go in my yard.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for watching. Tell us your favorite Mormon mythical beast in the comments below. If you've seen Bigfoot or perhaps the Bear Lake Monster, we would love to hear your account.
Or as it's Halloween, if you've ever seen a ghost. Even if you're a Mormon missionary and you thought you saw a ghost, it was a sleep paralysis situation, we want to hear your spooky stories.
Yeah, we didn't even mention the ghosts of Mormonism, like the founding fathers appearing in the St. George Temple to Wilford Woodruff, even though all their temple work had already been done at that point.
Tanner, I am not above doing a Mormon ghost stories episode next week.
We should do a ghost stories episode.
We really should.
Oh, I forgot the honorable mention of the 3 Nephites who are also wandering the earth, fixing people's cars and whatnot.
Tanner, I just realized Halloween is on a Monday.
If you were maybe possessed or something on your mission or saw a demon or have any kind of experience with that, submit your Mormon ghost stories. We're talking about them on Monday.
In a live.
Okay. Say
goodbye to your fans. He's playing it cool, don't worry about it.
Wow, sometimes the greatest sermon really is silence.
Silent, yeah.
And true enlightened master, that one. Okay, love you, bye.
Bye.